So, over the past week, it seems that the greater tech community has finally caught up to what Moore's Law is Dead fans have known for literal years. That's right, in 2023, I leaked that Nova Lake would use TSMC N2P for the top performing die, go to 16P cores and 32E cores with 4 LPE cores as well, and I even confirmed that it would have an answer to AMD's V-Cache for the second time. Actually, I'd already confirmed that beforehand. And since then, I have also updated the code names, talked about Intel using 18A for some of their dies, and having a 2026 release date for Nova Lake as well. So look, if you are a Moore's Law is Dead subscriber, the Intel news that came out this week wasn't news. But there is something that is new. It actually occurred to me that since 2023, I have put out tons of Zen 6 leaks, and so that gives us both sides now of the 2026 next-gen CPU competition, because, well, now we don't just know Nova Lake specs, we also know AMD Zen 6 specs. We know that next-gen, AMD might actually have a node advantage compared to now, where AMD is on 4nm with Zen 5, while Intel's on 3nm with Arrow Lake. Next-gen, AMD will be on N2X, while Intel's only on N2P. And also we know that AMD is increasing their core counts by 50% to 24 cores, or actually more if you consider those extra 2 LPP, not LPP cores that AMD will include with many of their Zen 6 products. And so all of this begs the question. It's great that AMD is increasing core counts by 50%, but with Intel seemingly doubling their core counts from Arrow Lake to Nova Lake, how can AMD match that? Well, the answer, actually, from what I am hearing, is possibly through absolutely ridiculous clock speeds for Zen 6. That's right, I'm going to leak today some whispers I'm hearing about Zen 6 having insane clock speeds, but then mostly rely on publicly available information, not anonymous sources, as much public information as I can to estimate which product launching next year, whether it's Nova Lake or Zen 6, will come out on top, in which PC users should be most excited for which of those products. But first, an ad from a sponsor. This piece of content is brought to you by Star Trek Fleet Command, a massively multiplayer strategy game that goes where no game has gone before. It's not just a game, in fact, it's the entire Star Trek universe in your pocket. You can engage in ship battles, build your own star base, complete detailed campaigns that have multiple missions, and even command legendary officers like Picard. In fact, right now, if you buy any bundle greater than $4.99 in-game, you unlock Lieutenant Picard for free, which is perfect for new players just getting started. Additionally, Starfleet is rolling out the red carpet for you right now with daily welcome gifts. It's an epic promotion for all new players. Get everyday rewards, an epic Romulan Captain Nero, who increases the damage of weapons by 40%. So don't forget to log in each day for 7 days and snag those rewards before they vanish into deep space as soon as you can. So support Moore's Law is Dead by using the link in my description or scan my QR code on screen to download the game for free on mobile or PC, and use promo code CONRULES until July 31st, also to unlock Officer Kirk for free. There's never really been a better time to get started. Again, don't forget to use my link or scan my QR code on screen to download the game. That supports the channel when you do that. And also, the galaxy needs a leader. Will you answer the call with Star Trek Fleet Command? All right, so Zen 6 versus Nova Lake. It's funny. I was at first, while I was writing the script for this video, contemplating doing some elaborate analysis where I estimate little core IPC with Arctic Wolf in Nova Lake and big core IPC, and then the benefits of SMT versus no SMT, and add it all up at the end. But honestly, I don't really think that's necessary for this comparison. No matter how accurate I try to be, we have to be honest that these can only ever be ballpark estimates at the end of the day, because we can never know truly until third-party reviews which of the designs will overperform or underperform their targets. So let's just stick with what we know, core counts, nodes, and go from there. Oh, and when it comes to IPC, I'll speak about this a bit from time to time, but, I've already leaked that my Intel sources expect like a 9 to 18% IPC uplift with Nova Lake, and that I have documented proof that Zen 6 is aiming for above a 10% IPC increase. Yeah, that sounds pretty similar, so I'm going to mostly ignore that for now and focus on cores, clocks, and nodes. All right, so the first type of performance I want to analyze is multi-threading, and I'm going to estimate the performance increase between both Nova Lake and Zen 6 from the existing flagships, which I think we can just group together because it seems to be basically a tie in multi-threading performance between the 285K and the 9950 X3D. All right, so if we have a tie right now, well, Intel's doubling cores to Nova Lake and AMD's only increasing core counts by 50%. Isn't that a 2 divided by 1.5 equals a 33% multi-threading win for Intel? Well, here's the part of the video where I get into a sort of pseudo leak when it comes to Zen 6. I've spoken with some additional AMD engineers from different teams than those that I consulted for those Zen 6 leaks earlier this year, and I am told that this greater than 6 gigahertz thing that's going around AMD teams right now, that quote is apparently very conservative. Now, I'm not going to tell you today what exact number I heard because, frankly, it's so insane I don't think any of you will believe me. And so I don't want to leak that until I can verify it from more sources. But also, quite legitimately, I know that targets can fall short as well. And so it would also just be smart for me just to not tell you because maybe the target will change. It is still a year before this thing comes out, at least most likely, at least for desktop. And so, look, I've heard that there is also a roadblock there as well, so maybe they could fall short of that. But again, the roadblock, the scaling wall they're trying to get past to get to this insane clock I've heard for desktop Zen 6, that roadblock is still well above 6 gigahertz. And so I believe that that 6 gigahertz number is almost a red herring here, something that is being circulated to tell people what they need to know around the company, but not tell them any more than they need to know for competitive reasons. Well, speaking of being conservative, though, you know which design team is in charge of the Zen 6 architecture at AMD? Well, I know who it is. It's the same one that did Zen 4. And does anyone remember what Zen 4 was initially stated to have? 5+ gigahertz clocks that ended up being 5.7 gigahertz. This is the same team that sandbagged that. And so, look, don't quote me as saying any exact number here today for what Zen 6 is likely going to achieve as top boost clocks, but I will say that I feel comfortable telling you it is probably going to be well above 6 gigahertz, not like 6.1 or 6.2. But actually, how much higher is plausible? Well, if we look at publicly available information, you can see that this chart from TSMC here, AMD is not doing a single node jump. They're going 1, 2, almost 3 node jumps from N4P to N3P to N2X. And so that is, I would say, about 2.5 jumps. And, well, think about this. From Zen 3 to Zen 4, that was a single node jump that this same team got a 16% clock speed increase and a double digits IPC increase. And so, look, again, over 2 node jumps instead of 1 node jump this time from the same team, I think it's very plausible to assume that they're going to get above a 10% clock speed increase going from Zen 5 to Zen 6. In fact, I'm told it's possibly much more than that, actually. However, if we're now going to compare this to Nova Lake, I think that we need to be fair to Intel and note that, you know, they're going from N3 to N3E to N2P. And so that's about a node or a node and a half of a jump as well for Arrow Lake to Nova Lake. And then they're also doubling core counts. And so let's add up the math and where we think the multi-threading will be. Nova Lake going from N3 to N3P, to N3E, I'm sorry, would be like a 3% increase most likely. But then from N3E to N2P, you get an 18% increase in performance based on TSMC's publicly available numbers. And then if we take in this math here, a 50% increase for AMD instead of a doubling for core counts, and then 1.15 times 1.15, but then times 1.1 again for that N2X version. They actually get pretty close, with this scratch math suggesting that Intel might be barely double digits faster than AMD next year in multi-threading. However, It has to be noted, though, that this is assuming just on paper math with nodes and assuming nothing extra AMD is doing with their new chiplet layout is going to help multi-threading performance at all. Like, for example, a bridge die, which I've already leaked that they will have. That could help in some multi-threading apps, potentially. That's mostly, I think, for like gaming and stuff, but it could help with that as well. This also assumes, this win on paper that Intel has, that Intel doesn't have throttling issues. I mean, think about it. AMD is going with a 50% core count increase, and then they are massively increasing clocks. But that's quite conceivable that they could do within like a 170 watt power budget, especially when you consider how much higher they tend to have all-core boost clocks right now compared to Intel, where Gamers Nexus testing shows that over time Intel tends to throttle quite a bit more with their base clock compared to AMD's base clock. And Intel's going to somehow try to cool 48 cores on desktop. I mean, I think I've seen some rumors suggesting 150 watts for 48 cores. So consider me skeptical that Intel will not have much lower all-core base clocks with 48 cores versus AMD's 24 cores on a better node. And so, look, on paper, I say maybe Nova Lake will have a slight multi-threading win, but when I consider the new chiplet enhancements AMD's bringing to the table that isn't captured in raw node increases for performance, and also the fact that Intel, I just think, is going to throttle more with sustained workloads with 48 cores, I actually think multi-threading could get close, but I might give a slight nod to Intel right now, potentially winning multi-threading, but slight. I wouldn't say it's guaranteed. All right. So now let us move on to gaming performance from multi-threading. And look, this one's not going to be very long. Here's how I would put what I expect from Zen 6 versus Nova Lake when it comes to gaming. So if we pull up the hardware unboxed average, we can see that the 9950 X3D beats the 285K by a humiliating 37%. Look, guys, I don't know if Nova Lake still has those rentable units that I exclusively leaked a couple years ago, and then leaked that Pat may have actually killed, so I don't know if some version of it survived in Nova Lake or not. But whether Nova Lake has rentable units or not, I have to admit that this is a huge hill to climb for Intel here to catch up to AMD in gaming performance next gen. But let's put it this way. Right now, if Zen 6 X3D, despite having radically higher clock speeds, at least 10% higher IPC, new bridge dies for lower latency, a unified 12-core CCX, which will help gaming performance, if we assume that Zen 6 X3D is only 10% faster in gaming than Zen 5 X3D, that means Arrow Lake going to Nova Lake, Intel has a 51% gulf in performance for gaming they'll need to climb, and that's just a tall order. And remember, that's a 51% gulf that assumes AMD only gets a 10% boost in gaming. Considering what I've heard about clock speeds, it wouldn't surprise me if Intel has a 60 or 70% gulf to climb. And I just don't think they will. Even when you add in that ELLC thing that I leaked, that is their answer to Vcache, I just still think AMD is going to win gaming next gen by double digits. I'll be happy to see Intel win. Really, I don't care which one wins. I'll just get whatever product is best for me, and I do say the same for you. But from where I am sitting, I think AMD is going to win gaming performance next gen. All right, and now let us move on to the final realm of competition, single threading. And note, single threading is not gaming performance. It's not even IPC, because ultimate single threading performance is also influenced, of course, heavily by clock speeds and other factors as well. When it comes to establishing the single threading baseline for this generation, if I average a couple single threaded benchmarks, I guess you could argue Arrow Lake's maybe a couple percent ahead of Zen 5 when it comes to IPC. And so if you take that into account, and then also take into account that I expect Nova Lake to have a higher IPC increase over Arrow Lake than I expect Zen 6 to have over Zen 5. And it's an expectation. I could see them being the same, or AMD somehow having a slight win there. But, we're ballparking. I think they will probably trade blows in single threading performance, where applications that heavily like high clocks will favor Zen 6, and then other applications that are more IPC-centric will favor Nova Lake. But it's too early for me to say which one will win that. And so there you go. In conclusion, Nova Lake is expected to double core counts to a whopping 48 cores total, whereas AMD is only going to 24 cores from 16. But remember, it's actually the same amount of threads because AMD will have 2 threads per core and Intel will not. And then AMD can also make up more lost ground in multi-threading by having their all P cores clock much, much faster than the average clock speed that Intel is able to achieve. And so I would say this is what you should expect out of Zen 6 versus Nova Lake at this stage. First of all, AMD is probably going to win gaming by double digits. I'm sorry, where I'm sitting, the massive core clocks that I've heard about, the fact that they are going to unify 12-core CCXs and low latency bridge dies, and then another IPC increase. All of this makes me think this is going to be another Zen 3 or Zen 4 level, or maybe better, gaming uplift for AMD once again, whereas Intel is going to have a very good uplift in performance, but verdict is still out on if they will have enough of an IPC uplift and if their ELLC will be good enough to get close to AMD. I think AMD is going to eke out gaming performance next gen. However, when it comes to multi-threading, I think Intel may win low double digits or maybe even just single digits because of AMD having higher clock speeds to make up for, how many less cores they have, but not less threads they have compared to Intel, if that makes sense. So, probably a win for Intel multi-threading, but not guaranteed. And then single threading, I expect those to trade blows. It's still early. We can't say for sure, but I think that when you see AMD going for clocks, Intel going for IPC, similar node, I think that their single threading performance will be very close. And well, then what does that mean? Gamers, I'm sorry. I think the choice is clear. You're going to want Zen 6 if you want to get a platform now and then upgrade later. You're going to want to make sure that platform is AM5. Get some budget, $200, $300 6 or 8 core CPU. And then just know you'll probably be able to get the gaming flagship for the next few years. A year from now on that motherboard you just started in your new PC. Whereas for Nova Lake, I think there's a real chance here. And it's a chance. I want to be clear. I'm not sure it's going to really win anything. But I think from the early math we have, it's a good chance that Nova Lake will possibly be a good workstation platform. Assuming that Nova Lake has a chipset with a ton of I/O, like rumors coming out right now suggest that it might, I think there's a solid option possibly in the future where you don't necessarily need to get Threadripper. You'll have multiple NVMe drives supported with a Nova Lake system that will also have 48 cores. That won't win you gaming Intel, 48 cores, but it might win you a lot of professional users. And so if you're someone thinking about upgrading in a year from now and you want to make it more of a productivity type system, maybe wait for Nova Lake. And the closing thought I have on all of this actually is just that I want to say I gave a lot of the benefit of the doubt to Intel with the math that I did here today. I assumed basically that Intel was going to get an above 10% IPC increase, maybe even upper double digits, but not 20%. And I assumed AMD might just get a 10% IPC increase. I also assumed AMD's clock speed uplift is going to be a bit below the target that I heard. And I also gave a lot of benefit of the doubt to Intel in terms of how much I think some of their 48 cores may throttle in sustained workloads. So what I'm saying is, I think there is a chance Zen 6 could just beat Nova Lake at everything, but I do have the math here to suggest that Intel could win at some things. It's just unlikely to be gaming. And frankly, the gulf right now in gaming between Intel and AMD is so far. It's so bad for Intel that if Nova Lake manages to win anything at this point and be priced competitively without being sold at a loss by Intel, I'm going to take this as a win, actually, and say that this will be a sign that Intel is on the right track to competing with AMD again. All right, that is going to do it for this video. If you enjoyed it, please remember to like it, to share it, to comment down below. Which one do you think will be the one you're more excited for? I'm actually very curious, the community. Are you more excited about Nova Lake from what I've told you? Or are you more excited for Zen 6? I think they're very different, and so the answers could be very interesting. Honestly, I have no idea which one you guys are excited for. In addition to that, please consider supporting Moore's Law is Dead on Patreon. If you do, you'll get early ad-free access to Broken Silicon at the proper tier. Every tier gets access to the Discord with thousands of Moore's Law is Dead fans that will love to discuss this with you. I am one of those people on the Discord that discuss this with you as well. I'm very active there, and so are our mods. I'm really proud of the community we've grown there. And then also you'll get access to a catalog of hundreds of die shrinks. Again, every tier gets access to this. They come out multiple times a month. We just had one that came out where it's basically just a bonus analysis video where I analyzed the ROG Xbox Ally X. We've got one where we took in feedback from devs about what's bottlenecking modern graphics. There's an evolution of NVIDIA die shrink me and Dan just did. There's tons of bonus content for you there if you have the extra few dollars or whatever you can afford a month. We cannot do this without our patrons. But, you know, I guess as I always say, if you made it this far into the video near the end, at a minimum, thank you for watching.